Hello and welcome to another episode of That 1 Inch Barrier, the monthly podcast where we look at films from all around the world and open up your eyes to a whole brand new world of cinema just to overcome that 1 inch barrier known as subtitles. I'm Nicola Barry, joined here by Josh Barry, Kieran Griffiths. Gentlemen, how are we today?
Doing well.
Yeah, good. Sort of.
Excited to crack into another episode.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
we've had some fun before the podcast started, so and we're feeling great. Sunday morning, 9:30.
Yeah.
Cracking. We were already talking about drinking different beers from different countries. French beers. We're all in a state right now. So
Really highlighting Australian culture right here.
Exactly right. And we haven't done a film with a lot of alcohol in it yet. Now I'm thinking anyway. So maybe we've got to start looking for a movie where we can sort of incorporate the. Anyway, that's a business meeting for any excuse. Australians. But obviously, thank you all for watching on YouTube if you are. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There's too many platforms for podcasts now that I can't remember. So if you listen to a podcast on some random platform, we are there most likely. But we thank you for your support and the ever-growing audience that does join our show. Obviously, thank you all for the support on the Mummy episode as well. That seemed to strike a bit of a nerve in a good way with a lot of you, so thank you for that. With the recent news coming out that Xavier Dolan said he is potentially walking away from filmmaking, so maybe if he listens to our episode, he'll get a bit...
Well, he said he was feeling a bit, creatively burnt out and that he made these films that no one watched. Xavier, just listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Listen to the
I think we can single-handedly get him back on track.
Someone send it to him.
Do you think, in that regards, we would be saving cinema?
I think it would be fair to say, if you were to do top 3 all-time saving cinema, I think we're up there with Tom Cruise and Christopher Nolan.
Hey, well,
I don't know what order, but I think that's a pretty solid top 3.
A top 3 is a top 3, and if we're number 1, that's just how the dice rolls, baby. But enough about us. Let's talk about the film we are here for today. And this month, Josh, it is your pick, so why don't you introduce us to the film we'll be talking about today?
Yes. My pick was a French film from 1991, Delicatessen. Same directors as Amélie. I assume quite a lot of people, even if you haven't watched much foreign films, have seen Amélie. So yeah, this is their first film, I think. The IMDb, what do we call it?
Synopsis.
There it is. Post-apocalyptic surrealist black comedy about the landlord of an apartment building who occasionally prepares a delicacy for his odd tenants.
That's a very very apt way of putting it.
I wasn't going to say the directors' names because I'll definitely butcher these, but Marc, Caro, and Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
So yeah, this was their first film. They did short films and music videos before this, I believe, and then. But did they dual direct Amélie together as well? Is that?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Which I think Amélie, because you've seen Amélie, right?
Yeah. Like Josh said, most people who've watched a few films have probably seen Amélie.
Totally, yeah. And it's one of those ones where it's kind of like, I remember even the cultural impact that had when it came out as well. So, but Delicatessen, I guess, is there I knew about this movie. This was my first time watch for this, but I was aware of this film, but I think I was mostly aware of it due to you. Probably. You've seen this a couple of times.
I think probably around the mid 2005-ish, I kind of got into it. And I remember watching it a fair bit. Yeah. I think I probably watched it 3 or 4 times.
Has it got a bit of a cult following?
I think
it strikes me as a bit of a cult following.
Yeah. But then when I put it on the other night, we kind of realised I hadn't watched it probably for a good, I reckon 10 to 15 years. It had been. So, but I remembered pretty much it's quite memorable.
You watched it enough in the mid 2000s.
It's a very distinct film.
It is really. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I think but it's funny having watched Amélie and watching this, and I could get that the same directors made this movie. There's a bit of there's an abstract nature to it, not just in regards to the content or what the film's about, but the way they made the actual visual aesthetic of the film.
Yeah, well,
it's
very
abstract.
Very surreal.
Very surreal, which I mean, what did you say? Post-apocalyptic surrealist black comedy. I was like, that sums it up, but that's also broad. Broad as hell. So
Delicatessen was the first. 10 years later, they did Amélie.
Yeah. Wow.
And then since then, they did a war film with her in it, a very long engagement.
So I know of that one. Yeah,
that one was really good as well.
Was it Audrey Tautou as well in that one? Yeah. She really hit the scene hard in that early 2000s, didn't she? Yeah. In a mainstream way.
Yeah.
So this was your first time watching it as well?
First time for me, and I think the only thing that I kind of knew about the film going into it is that it was one of Josh's favourites because, on Letterboxd, obviously you have your 4 favourites, and I believe that is one of your 4 favourites.
Yeah, yep.
So I think between this and Itu Mama, we've ticked off quite a few of your favourite films.
Josh is just like, I'm really enjoying this podcast because I'm watching all my favourite movies. And then I bring Barking Dogs Never Bite. No, it's not a bad movie, guys. It was just not great.
But no, first time for me, like I said, I'd watched Amélie maybe a couple of years ago for the first time and really enjoyed it. It's a weird, quirky, like we said, very surreal film, both visually and in terms of its content. And as you said, I have no trouble believing that the director of Amélie directed this.
Yeah. Content-wise, though, it's very separated from how joyful Amélie is because while this is a dark comedy, emphasis on the dark, it's kind of... What I found really funny is that there is a lot of thematic things that are pretty intense in this movie. But I actually ultimately found this is a love story. This is a romance movie ultimately between two of the main characters, and it just happens to be set on the backdrop of this like dystopian apartment block where grain is currency and the meat is potentially not animal. I mean, they sort of give that away quite early on when they make out that meat is this huge delicacy, but then also the opening scene is someone trying to escape this butcher in a very comical but also kind of terrifying way. So
what was because I like before the Delicatessen title comes up, and there's that scene. Like, what was your reaction straight off from that?
I mean, my reaction was, and this is going to be a bit of a lengthy one, but I want to cast your mind back to the last time we recorded, and Josh went, "Yeah, I've picked a more light-hearted film next month." I felt we needed a comedy.
When that happened.
So I've picked a dark comedy. And I thought, okay, it's a dark comedy. It's still going to be, it's going to be a bit dark, but it's going to be funny. And then within like the first 5 minutes, we've got implied cannibalism. What were we watching before this? If this is light-hearted, a Serbian film?
Yeah, I mean, on that episode it was about child murder and abduction. So I mean, comparatively, is cannibalism that bad?
And animal abuse, I'd put that above cannibalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If we're talking about the top 3 cinema savers, like for me, cannibalism's a top 3, but it's a number 3. It's not that bad. Please don't take that clip out of context. If I go viral for saying cannibalism's not that bad, this show's over before it started.
But it was nice. It was like this. It was really shocking. I really didn't expect it to go there. I loved like the sort of comedic tension almost of this guy trying to escape. This butcher in a trash can because he's like, you see him first like taping rubbish around himself.
That's right.
And I'm like, what is going on?
Doing?
And then you see him in the bin and he's just poking his head out and like these big bulging eyes.
That's the defining characteristic, and that's the poster that I have up on IMDb at the moment is those bulging eyes as well. And it's just one of those things where you can kind of tell that the directors would have gone specifically for him because it is a more abstract look. It is not necessarily a stereotypical human look. It's supposed to catch you straight away with this world is not our world.
This time watching it, I really noticed every single character that the actor picked had very defined,
like distinguished features.
Yeah. I mean, without trying to sound too much like a dick, they're all very distinct looking. Like they're all a bit strange.
And it feels very intentional. Like you were saying.
But even in like the way their hair is done or their costumes, like they all have these really distinct faces, which kind of makes them almost feel like these caricatures. Which I think adds to that kind of surrealist, absurd element.
It's just immediately made to make you feel like this is not happening in your world. And I think that's kind of cool. Like, and another aspect of that really adds to that sort of surrealism for me was the opening credits. And I loved the opening credits. It made me miss opening credit sequences. And it's a fun way of just using the surroundings. And I like the things like, the composer was on a broken vinyl disc and the director of photography was like mirrored, the shot was placed in a certain way. Cool. Yeah, and it was cool. And the score, and I can't remember who the composer was, but the score for me as well has this quite whimsical feel to it. So it catches you off guard. Immediately, like the opening scene, when you break it down, is someone running away from a murderer. And you're laughing, and then the opening credits is just this happy-go-lucky, and I was like, "What am I watching?" But it hooks you in, and I think that's the best thing. Like any movie with a great opening scene and great opening hook, usually will, I'll give a benefit of the doubt, no matter how crazy or insane it gets as it goes on. So it had me understanding what I was getting myself into quite early on, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the opening credits because it feels weird to say that. A credit sequence is one of your favorite things in a film.
Yes.
But it is so creative and imaginative, especially I feel like for 1991, it comes across as a bit old hat now, but it's the sort of thing you'd almost expect to see in like a video game or even like an animated film.
Yeah, totally.
So to see it in this context was quite strange, but I really liked it.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah. I think that kind of brings up one of my first points that I kind of want to discuss is that opening scene and those opening credits really highlighted something for me that I think the film does really well, and it's show, don't tell. I really think there's a lot of dialogue in this movie. Obviously, there's a lot of characters and a lot of people talking and things about the story and character motives are revealed through dialogue. But especially that opening scene, I think the directors do a really great job of just letting things play out visually and letting you as the audience, and I guess for international films or for a French film, for us who don't speak French, it's kind of great. There's a universality. Words. Yeah. I have to speak one language and it's English.
I can't speak that well.
And I can't do that well. But there's a feeling to it that I was like, I fully understand. But it's funny then that your main character is a circus clown as well, in the sense, or a former circus clown or someone who has been a circus clown in his past, who relies on visual gags to make people laugh and make people feel happy. I think that's a fun, strong correlation between that character and the directorial style of the fact that a lot of what we see in the film, a lot of what is revealed to us is just shown rather than told to us. And I think that's that's one of the film's stronger elements. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I just love how it kind of drops you in there as well and doesn't. It's like, okay, you'll figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, there's no text at the beginning going like,
no,
3000 AD, the world has crumbled and now grain is currency. Yeah,
exactly.
It's just the information we need for this story is just drip fed to us as needed. Yeah. Because like we said, that's just the backdrop for a love story, ultimately.
Yeah, it is,
Which is great, between Julie and Louison.
Julie? I love that.
Bonjour. What a little throwback. But yeah, is there anything about the visual style that sort of stuck out to you, or anything about the way they told the story through the visual aspect that you found was strong, you didn't like?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, it does have this real, like, I keep coming back to the words surreal and absurdist. Totally, it's all very heightened. Like you said, it feels like it's taking place in a world that isn't ours. There's lots of really strong colors. Like everything has a really orange or green tinge to it. Like nothing about it feels natural.
No,
it all feels very artificial, but in a very deliberate and artistic way.
Yep.
So I think it does really help you to get into that mindset of where this movie's at and what it's about. I think with what you were saying about the show don't tell, it's always a really fine line.
Yes.
Because for me, there were definitely a lot of elements of the narrative where I was like, I don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And we'll get into it a bit later, but even stuff with the resistance movement that we find out about later in the film.
Yeah.
I didn't really sort of understand where that was coming from.
Yeah. Definitely the introduction to them I found, well, it's because when Julie walks down to the sewers and I was like, what's going on here? So I get that.
Yeah. So, and I think what this boils down to for me is that there are elements of the film that I like and that some of them that I love, but I don't know if I like the film as a whole.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if everything kind of works for me.
Yeah.
But there are definitely elements of this that I really love. And moving from visuals to sound, I think sound is one of the best things about this film.
Yeah. Again, it's there's a whimsical nature to the sound of this. It feels like you're watching, probably maybe heavily influenced by as well, like a slapstick comedy.
Yeah, well,
as well, the way they do things. Yeah.
I found it interesting that the last movie we did, M,
right, yeah,
was like a 1930s film.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of this that had that feeling for me.
Right.
The music. There was definitely some scenes down in the sewers that I'm like, that just looks like a 1930s, 1940s film.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, very sort of like that neo-gothic kind of look. And very Chaplin-esque, like you were saying, that very slapstick. Just in the way that the characters move in the environment and interact with each other.
And then on top of that movement, then the sound, I'm assuming we're probably all thinking the same scene when it comes to sound, is the sex scene.
Yes.
Which turns into somewhat of a musical number.
Yeah.
Which was kind of, again, surreal, which is probably going to be the buzzword of the episode, but like it was a funny scene and it was well put together.
And it just got better and better. Like when it started, I was like, oh, it's funny. But then by the end of it, it was actually really good. So, I guess to explain, basically the butcher and his wife are having sex in a scene on a very squeaky bed.
Yep.
And it's sort of this rhythmic, squeaking of the spring on the bed. And everyone else in the apartment building in their own apartments is doing something else. Someone is beating out a rug.
Yep.
Julie is playing her cello.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
You can tell I know.
A stringed instrument. Yeah.
And then, there's a couple of other things that people are kind of doing in this sort of like rhythmic pattern. And as the sex builds up and gets faster and more intense, everyone else starts unconsciously doing their thing faster and faster. Until the climax of the sex happens, and then Julie breaks one of the strings on her instrument, and like all these things just kind of crescendo together. So it's like this sort of weird, surreal orchestra.
Yeah, which was great. And even a visual of that scene is like the abnormally large bed springs as well that the camera keeps focusing on. It's one of those things where it takes me back to a Chaplin-esque sort of vibe where everything is so larger than life in the most literal sense. Yeah. But that scene's hilarious. And the editing of that scene is brilliant as well. And then the climax is hilarious, like in more ways than one. Yeah. Which I thought was great. So I guess before we jump into where the film goes in regards to the sewer people, I guess you could say, and stuff, we probably should highlight the love story of this film, because Louison, who's played by Dominique Pignon, sort of arrives and he's looking for a place to stay in this apartment. And the butcher, who is the landlord as well, is kind of like, you can stay here, but you've got to work for me and do all this stuff. He's like, no, I can do that. But the butcher has ulterior motives, because in this dystopian world, to feed everyone, he kills people, and some people in the building are aware of it, and some people are pretty ignorant or choose to ignore it, and some people just don't know as well. So then he falls in love with the butcher's daughter, Julie, and it creates this rift between everyone of like, well, Julie doesn't want Louison to be killed, but they also need meat to feed everyone. Yeah. So it's funny that this story of like, it's a really sweet romance. It's almost like, I don't want to say childlike isn't. I'm looking for like innocent. It's an innocent romance, right? It's like an innocent romance. It's just very much we are two people who are misunderstood by the world. They both have their artistic backgrounds, as one being a clown, Julie being a musician, and they find ways to sort of correlate their loves and their passions, and it leads to romance and stuff. And it's really nice and it's really sweet, and you're watching it, and then the whole time you're like, but this guy's going to get minced up by a butcher soon, which means, I just want to say, my favorite line in the movie was when the butcher goes, "I'm a butcher, but I don't mince words." Lost it. I thought that was my favorite line of the whole film.
It feels like it needs like that. What is it? CSI Miami, where he like puts the glass on. I was waiting for that. But I think if you ever thought your father-in-law was bad, he's probably never tried to eat you. So
but that we know of. No judgment. I can. So it's just interesting. I find that the romance to me was part of the movie that I was more interested in after the cannibalism stuff. Like I liked how it was portrayed on screen, and Louison's a bit of a joker. After Julie finds out that her dad is going to try and kill him, she walks in and he's got his gag, like decapitation thing, his head on a plate and the fake knife through the head. And it's just so abstract. Have you ever tried to prank your partners by pretending you're decapitated? Works every time. But I really enjoyed the romance element of the film is where I'm getting at, despite its backdrop. I don't know how you boys feel about that. Is that something, one of your favorite parts of the movie? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's the... that's I guess the feel good element of the film, and I feel like him coming to the building is also the feel good element. Like he brings like this sort of like you said, an innocent kind of
like an energy. He's doing tricks for the kids and stuff, and
that's right.
When I said, and all the residents of the apartment sort of really come to love him because he fixes stuff around the building, and he's entertaining and he's fun, and so. Everyone's sort of really reticent because they know what's going to happen to him because, the butcher has a bit of a track record of doing this is how he gets people. He puts the ad out in the paper. Someone responds to the ad. They work there for a week and then he, chops them up. So everyone's sort of really, nervous
and you
because
thought your job was bad.
Honestly, at this point. So everyone's kind of really on edge because they know what's going to happen to him, but they like having him around. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and we obviously kind of know as an audience what's potentially going to happen to him, and how he's going to get out of this. So I think it creates that really interesting tension, and obviously Julie is aware of what her father does. She doesn't approve of it. She's a vegetarian, which seems to be like this common theme throughout the film. But yeah, it's like you said, it's this really sweet, innocent romance. Like they are kind of like two people who've never done anything like that before, so it is very very first timey sort of thing for them.
It's bloody sweet. But then as that goes along, we start learning about more about the butcher's past, or not necessarily his past, but his intentions to kill people and his desire to, he will probably kill anyone who's required. When someone can't pay rent, he's like, well, if you can't pay rent, maybe you should offer up your mother-in-law and we can eat her, which leads to I would love to say comical scene because it was kind of funny, but the context of it is dark as hell, involving a ball of yarn and an old lady.
I find that so funny.
It is a really funny scene. Again, it's that Chaplin slapstick. The score in that scene is what you would expect, like a tense, stringy score, but it's this like whimsical piano sort of thing, and it just always catches you off guard.
Yeah. I think
so much, especially in the first 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah. And I think like all the way through it, the way they use the camera it's really amazing. Like very close up and sort of bringing it in gives...
It's good because it's not like disorientating. Like I feel like a lot of movies that do focus on moving the camera a lot or being sort of uncomfortably like claustrophobically close to the characters can feel very off-putting but like this to me, rather than making me feel queasy, sort of made me not just more immersed into the world, but like it just kept doubling down on its abstract nature. And I got to respect it for that. Like at times where I go like, this is weird as hell, but I'm like, but you're committing to the weirdness and I can't fault you for that. Where I do think that falls apart a little bit is probably towards the end in that last, I feel like the last 20 minutes or so of the movie becomes a bit more... And maybe this is just because of the scale of what happens in the film, but it becomes a bit more generic in that sense. Like they were kind of like, and in fairness, they've even admitted it's a small budget movie, and this probably a lot of the budget went to the last sort of 20 minutes of the movie. It's like, we just got to capture this. Like we can't. So I think it loses a bit of that abstractness in its visual style and focuses more on how absurd the ending is, which is crazy. Like, I don't know if that is the story, if that's because it was, such an expensive ending to make just on their budget, whether they had to sort of sacrifice that. But it's noticeable. I think it's unfortunately noticeable at the end. So while we are talking about visual stuff and things of the film, do you actually guys have a favorite scene from the movie in general, maybe outside of the opening credits, which were great?
Yeah, given that we do this every month, you'd think I'd prepare a favorite scene. Josh, do you want to take this one away? Because I need some time.
I'm from... It's like this, that sex scene. Yeah, it's pretty special, and it's always what I remembered from the film. Like from the first time I watched it, and then even when I brought it up the other, like that is the one thing I really remember.
It's memorable, yeah.
But there's also, I mean, it is also a bit like it's it's in an apartment building, and it's almost like all these mini little stories going on.
Yeah, totally,
all the way through.
Yeah.
So some of those threads, like the woman who keeps trying to kill herself in.
Oh my God. Yeah. Actually, I think
like that story thread for me is just every time I watch that, it gets funnier and funnier and funnier.
Which is a weird thing to say about a woman who's trying to
It really is, but and it's also like her reaction when she fails.
I was going to say, I think my favorite orchestrated scene, like the way it's all put together and just the mishap after mishap, is, and this is a slight spoiler, I guess, but she attempts to commit suicide at the end of the film, but in 4 different ways. She's like, I'm gonna get it right this time.
Yeah.
There's she tries to hang herself. She attempts for when the door opens a shotgun to shoot her. She's gonna take sleeping pills. She's gonna fall on something.
She's got the gas going.
The gas going with the light.
Yeah.
And still fails to commit suicide.
one.
And again, it's not something you should laugh at in any other context, but the way this movie builds it up and the reasoning behind it, I think that, like, in a construction sense, might be my favorite scene in the movie as well. It definitely stuck out. And
there's also so many little, like the 2 guys that are making those little I don't know what they are. But that scene always stuck out to me as well. Like just them testing each sound and I don't know, it's like just bizarre.
Yeah, it is
but
bizarre,
just those little mini story threads all throughout. I think that's why I love the film so much. It's just got so much going on. And I think every time I've watched it, I pick more up. It actually gets way less confusing. It's actually fairly simple, like the more you watch it.
Yeah. But there is a lot going on, especially for a first time watch. There's a lot going on. Yeah.
I think, probably the sort of, it's almost like a Rube Goldberg-esque machine that she's got going. You know, it's like one thing sets off another thing, sets off another thing. And the end result is that it'll kill her. Because
and not really by her hand, I guess.
Yeah, she wants to kill herself but can't bring herself to do it.
Yeah.
So like one of the first attempts she has is that when a guy comes around to buzz the doorbell, it's going to set off some other thing that's going to set off another thing. That'll set off the sewing machine, that'll start pulling the thread through, that'll pull a toaster off of a shelf into the bath that she's waiting in, and electrocute her. And
I love that note says, push doorbell hard.
Yeah.
Because it takes quite a while for them.
But they set that up earlier in the in the film as well, though, that how hard it is to push that doorbell. Like, it's great that it comes back around to another.
So I think those are probably my favorite scenes, just because they are so sort of slapstick comedy. There's that real absurd element to them, and like we said, we shouldn't find it funny.
Yes,
but it
contextually though, it is like within the parameters of the dark comedy of the film, right? Like it's
And we should mention as well that, I mean, the reason that she wants to kill herself is because she keeps hearing these voices in her head.
Oh my God. That's right.
So that
reveal is brilliant as well, by the way.
Yeah. And that's the reveal is absolutely hilarious. I won't reveal what the reveal is.
But it's...
Did not expect it coming.
The scene is great.
It had me in stitches.
This movie is fucked. It's so all over the place.
That's pretty much the tagline, isn't it? This movie is fucked.
but it'd be interesting actually. Now you've kind of got me thinking about wanting to watch it for a second time in that regard, to be like, what did I miss about and maybe narrative threads that I thought, that wasn't as fleshed out. Like probably was. Again, like you're focusing on the fact that the 2 main characters are in a love story in which the father of the girl is trying to kill the boyfriend or the love interest. So
I mean, the other scene I love is where they're having tea for the first time in her apartment, and she
my God, that's right. We're not wearing her glasses.
And brilliant. When she pours that tea, and like to see him every drop of that. And I actually watched a little mini interview with him. So in the script, they were meant to sit in the other seats, so opposite seats. And it wasn't quite working for him. They'd done a couple of takes, and the director was like, just said to Dominic Pignon, right, I want you to, when it happens, just sit in the other seat. And they didn't tell her. So when he sits down, her reaction is real.
Right.
And then they just do the scene. Like it, and I think that it was so genuinely... Like
it adds another level of like, because it's almost like, like you learn a dance and they ask you to do it in reverse kind of thing, right? Like you know all the moves, but then
that's right, But I do love that scene.
That scene's brilliant. That is funny, And again, like we've said it a couple of times, it's that Chaplin-esque comedy of the cups trying to catch all the tea. It's absolutely brilliant. And I guess that leads to, do you have a favorite character in the film? We've spoken a few now because we've got Louison and Julie who are in love. We've got the butcher. We've got this whole cavalcade of comedic characters.
There's so many.
So many. But is there one that sticks out in particular?
I think it's hard to go past Louison.
Yeah.
I think, he's just so... He's so lighthearted. He's lovable.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a bad bone in him.
No,
he's just...
No, there's not.
And I think even if he found out, that Clappett the butcher was trying to eat him, he'd probably just like, I get it. It's all right. I don't mind. He's just that sort of guy. And I think... He's he almost sort of stumbles through life, but just makes everything better for everyone around him and himself.
Yeah.
And I just really love that energy about him. And I think is it Aurora, the woman who is trying to,
yes.
She's great. Just because I love her facial expressions. I love the way that she, reacts to everything that's going on. So I think those two for me.
Yeah. I mean, Lewison for sure.
Yeah.
Everything you've just said. His face as well. You just watch it like.
It's a great facial performance.
Yeah, he's very, Which, again, the last film, M, we kind of talked about that main guy as well.
True, yeah.
So it was funny. I was just picking up different things from that M.
It's funny. Like I said, it adds to that sort of universal tone of like, being a film in a foreign language, there is still so much that is shown through, but the intention wasn't being made to be like, we need English audiences to understand this. Like they just love this style of acting and filmmaking, and it's kind of great. Yeah,
but I think the butcher was such an important character.
I agree.
And him as an actor, really,
Jean-Claude Dreyfus, who was my favorite character. He's my favorite performance in the film.
He's amazing.
There are certain scenes. So the scene when he gets his rent paid, I guess you could say, in one way or another.
Yeah.
He does this face that is super, like, you would assume is just like a childish thing, but in the context of the situation is quite horrifying. He's very mimicking. Like, he doesn't care about the tenants at all. He cares about either getting paid.
Yeah, well, he loves
his money. But he also loves killing people.
He seems to take.
He seems to have a real knack for it. So, like in that scene where he is killing that lady, it is kind of like comedically horrific, which is just like it shouldn't work. They don't meld together well. But his performance kind of makes me unsettling. I can't even speak this morning. But I'm having a good time with it as well. So I think he's fantastic in the film.
I'm surprised. I don't think he's done much.
I don't believe he has either.
Which is so strange.
Search, but
because he's really good in that.
Oh, he's done 183 titles.
Okay.
A
Yeah.
lot of short films, a lot of French films. But hey,
I was just surprised that I don't think I've seen him.
It's all. Else? He's been in a couple of their other films. He did A Very Long Engagement as well. But I think, comparatively, like to this film, this seems to be the one.
It's his big one. Yeah,
it's his big one. It's number one on his known for IMDb. So
I think second or third is an uncredited role in like Fitzcarraldo or something like that.
Yeah, right.
So it's like he's not done a lot that probably most people have heard of. But
he's great. He's great in the film.
He's fantastic. I think, as you said, the way he uses his face and the way a lot of the actors use their faces and their facial expressions, it's sort of, as you said, it's like the faces that you would make at a baby to like try and entertain.
It's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
In the context, it's absolutely terrifying.
He's trying to scare her, which is even worse. Yeah. Like it's kind of great. So, but before we break down sort of, what we believe with the, more French films and how it compares in that regard, I guess we should kind of, without spoiling it too much, talk about the ending, because obviously I think you probably have something a little bit to say about when we get to the sewers and stuff. And that's probably, to me, where the movie fell apart a little bit for me. I was having such a fun time. And then it goes to a place in its last, I would say probably like half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, that was entertaining, but kind of, for a movie that was already so off the rails as much as it was, just went to a level that I was kind of like, I don't understand what you're trying to do here. So without giving away too much, there is just a underground group of people who are vegetarians who stay away from the world above because, they hear the rumors of people getting killed and they don't, they're like an activist, they're like a rebellion almost.
Like a resistance
movement. A resistance movement, who are tasked by Julie to kidnap Lewis and to get him out of the situation, ultimately. Yeah. And it leads to a very, I guess, in this film, sort of action-packed finale.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it an action, but for what this movie is, it's pretty much like an action set piece of extraction, you could say. But I would like to get your thoughts on it, Kieran, because obviously I think you probably have something to say about these people.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's almost where the thread starts to unravel a bit. It sort of goes from a level of ridiculousness that I can enjoy to a level that becomes hard to follow.
Yep.
It just dials everything up. There are so many different things happening at once. You don't really know where to look or what you're supposed to be sort of following along with. So I had a hard time kind of keeping up with everything. And I think that kind of pulled me out of the film a bit. Right. I mean, I imagine there's a lot of deeper thematic meaning to the whole underground resistance movement. Like I was reading the Wikipedia page and people are talking about how the film is visually influenced by some Hungarian photographer and how it's an allegory for, the German occupation of France.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, of course it is.
That's it.
Obviously.
Show me European films that aren't. Okay, yeah.
So, I think that's all great and all. But from I think from a narrative perspective, you could almost take those characters out and sort of change the ending a bit. And I don't know if I'd like it any less. Like I think I'd probably actually enjoy it more if it just stayed with the characters in the apartment building, and how they sort of navigate that situation. I think introducing this whole new element almost 2/3 of the way through the film, just sort of changed it for in a way that I didn't really like.
What do you think about the ending?
I get that. I remember after the first time I watched it, that was definitely the bit I was the same. I probably didn't like that bit. The stuff in the apartment and that world they build is so amazing. And like we were saying, whimsical, and then it kind of goes down there and gets a bit gritty and like you just said, kind of confusing.
Yeah.
I have seen it quite a few times, and it gets definitely.
It's like an easier pill to swallow. Yeah, totally,
for sure. And I'm watching it the other night. It's not confusing at all now. But I can completely see that, especially off a first time watch.
I still appreciate the aesthetics of all that. Like I like the set. I like the reveal of the troglodytes, I guess is what they're called. So when they grab Julie's feet through there, and then there's like 50 of them that pop out of nowhere.
Pop up.
I love that shot.
Scene.
I really appreciate it. And I think there is a lot of comedy within, once they are in the apartment building, there are really great visual gags.
Yeah.
But I did find myself then going back to like, oh yeah, what's happening with the butcher and Louis' son on the roof right now?
Yeah.
Because there was still enough comedy in that. Like I love obviously the climax is a confrontation between Louis' son and the butcher, and they're fighting with the TV antennas, and the lady downstairs is like, no, move it over here, like to the left, and they're just fighting, unintentionally fixing her TV antenna, and it's great. It's like it's a fun little gag bit, but to me, I'm almost saying like that probably could have been enough for me. Like if I had this fight on the rooftop, and it's funny saying that because I know we are all pioneers and champions of the current movement of make all films 90 minutes long.
Yes.
This is only 99 minutes.
Yeah. Yep.
And the ending is the part that feels the most dragged out to me because of how much is really happening. So it feels weird to say for a 99-minute movie, probably could have cut it down a little bit. But there are moments in the end where I thought, there's probably a bit too much happening, and especially in a movie that is already as heightened, abstract, surreal, ridiculous as it is, I probably didn't need it that much. But again, if someone has gotten the allegory that was inspired by a Hungarian photographer out of it, then that's great. It's probably a 5-star movie for that person, right? So, and that's the beauty of cinema.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the last sort of half an hour of this movie. I definitely think there was moments where, like I said, like the visual aesthetic for me, despite the cinematography itself sort of taking a more it reduces the wrong word. It sort of just took a step back a little bit from being as full of movement and energy and focusing on that abstract to there's a big set piece that involves flooding a bathroom, right? You know what I mean? Like you've just got to catch that footage, right? It's a big stunt for this, and it obviously seems like they've built this whole set, right? And they're about to potentially destroy it. Like you've got to make sure you get that. So I understand from that, but like we said earlier, it is a noticeable change from how energetic and abstract the first 2/3 of the movie is. So it's probably just one of those things where the technicality of filmmaking gets in the way of the vision of filmmaking. Which sucks, like, you know, and it might not be the case, but that's just how I felt watching it.
I think one of the weirdest things about the film, and it's such a small thing, but it's so bizarre, and maybe it's because of where we're from, but the Australian thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, the knife.
So Lewiston has a knife that he refers to as the Australian.
Well, did you assume because it was boomerangs, right?
Well, that's what I thought. But it's just,
Well, why?
it's so bizarre.
Kieran's sitting there going like, wait a second.
As soon as
He's
he
so
says
weird.
it.
It's my culture.
And it's my inherited culture. But
Oh, that's actually true.
depends who's winning the Ashes at the moment. But it's just so weird, and it comes back on a few occasions. Like I think it's maybe brought up like 2 or 3 times in the film, and ultimately serves pretty important in the finale.
Yeah. What did you think of that moment did you like that whole ending with the Australian? Because I knew it was coming back. Like as soon as we saw that, I was like, that's going to be something towards the end. I didn't know who it was going to be used on, but I was like, yeah, that's coming back.
It felt fitting.
Yes.
It felt like a fitting end.
That is a great way of putting it, actually. It's almost like this movie was already unpredictable enough. It was kind of nice that there was a fitting ending, I guess you could say. Yeah.
But I think the sets are definitely one of the most impressive parts of the film.
Totally, yeah.
I think the way they destroy it at the end, and you've got like, you know, these multiple levels of an apartment building kind of exposed with like these floors that have been broken open and roofs that have been broken open.
It looks great. Yeah.
It does. Even like the scenes down in the sewers, you know, it's very, like you said, it feels like you're watching an old film with like just the lighting and the way that the camera's positioned. So I think for a relatively small budget film, the sets and the design is definitely one of the things I liked most about it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and it is 30 years old now.
Yeah, true.
And I also feel like, like you watched this in 1991, 1992, there's nothing. I mean, even now I can still say I've not really seen anything like that.
Yeah, no.
No, it's pretty out there.
It
It's a good point. Yeah. So you watched it on the Blu-ray, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you watch it?
I watched it on Shudder.
So did I.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. I was talking to Josh before we started, and I was like, I thought the transfer onto Shudder was phenomenal for a streaming quality. You know, the streaming quality that we have. I thought it visually looked incredible. I thought the transfer was great. So I'm interested in how you thought the Blu-ray looked. Oh, sorry. You just stopped. You looked like you saw something really shocking.
Oh no, I was just seeing what the budget was.
I think it was about 3-4 million, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I don't know.
US dollars.
So did you find the Blu-ray transfer quite visually enticing,
great.
I guess you could say?
No, great, like really good. Yeah.
That's just film though. Hey, how good. Just transferring film to this digital format looks great. So I thought I thought it looked great on Shudder,
Yeah, I signed up for the free trial, had a look at what else was on there and went, I won't be renewing that.
I got 2 months for 99 cents and I did the same thing. I went scrolling through and I was like, yeah, thanks for putting Delicatessen on there. I appreciate it.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't know about you guys. I own every other streaming service. I'm not adding one more into
I know, I'm starting to have to get rid of them now. So, so we've kind of already spoken about as well how we feel this compares to Amélie with being the same directors and how that the abstract nature of their cinematography and the way that they show things in a very heightened manner is obviously apparent from 1991 to 2000 or 2001 when Amélie came out. So, but with French cinema in regards, which is probably arguably one of the most watched for like international cinema for English watching audiences. How do you feel like things like Delicatessen compares to what we've seen from other French directors?
I think I've not watched a heap of French films, but I think they definitely have a knack for sort of the weird and the abstract and the ridiculous.
Yeah.
Obviously, they do, you know, dramatic films and action films and all the other genres that you would expect of any, you know, American or British production. But I feel like when they're making something that sort of feels distinctly French, they're definitely willing to go into more weird and absurd places than what you would expect from an American film.
Yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
So I think, like Amélie is the obvious comparison, but I think that is kind of representative of what I think of when I think of a French film.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of very kind of whimsical, absurd, ridiculous, fun.
I'll throw a director out there, Quentin Dupieux. Duper, who did Rubber. He did Smoking Causes Coughing, Incredible But True.
Yep.
Deerskin, all these incredibly heightened abstract films that having very dark undertones to them as well, but also explore very dark undertones that explore very human themes. So if we look at his film Incredible But True, and I'm a big fan of his work as well, and I'm an even bigger fan because he makes his movies like 70 minutes long. Hollywood, stop making 4-hour fucking movies. He Incredible But True is about coming to terms with aging. Like, it's super simple. It's just it's a simple, but it's done in such a creative way. Deerskin is about being accepted for someone you're not rather than who you really are. And it's very interesting takes, but it's done in these super heightened, absurd ways. So I think there's very much it's almost like French cinema is almost its own genre in that sense. But then again, there's when you look at films like anything that's sort of like maybe Léa Seydoux is in, like I think like Blue is the Warmest Color.
Yeah.
These very realistic, very intimate, and I think intimacy is very synonymous with French cinema with how liberal they are with nudity and sex and drug use and things like that. And smoke. As silly as it sounds, like smoking is just very much a part of French culture in that sense. There's also this other half that is super gritty, not gritty, but realistic and very personable and whatnot, and authentic, I guess, to the human condition. So it's funny that there's this duality of, and it's almost like on a spectrum of like, we're either going to make this incredibly realistic, or we're going to have a, dystopian apartment block where the landlord butcher kills people and serves the food. You know what I mean? Like with troglodytes living underground. Yeah. So to me, it's like this definitely fits in with a genre of French cinema. But it's funny how crazy the other end of the spectrum is of French cinema, and there doesn't seem to be an in-between. You either make these sorts of abstract films or you don't.
Yeah. I think more than any other country, French films for me just drop you in a story.
Yes.
And so if it was an American film, there'd be a lot more build up and sort of context to what was going on.
Oh, we'd probably get a 30-minute scene of what life was like before the apocalypse.
Yes, totally.
I do definitely find
we need to get to know the characters. And it's like, well, yeah, we do. But
I love that, like, kind of working it out on the journey through the film. I think out of any country, France is probably the biggest that does that for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's definitely a respect for the audience's intelligence.
There is, yeah.
Which is not great when you've got me watching your film, because
it's like you and me both, and this is what we do for a podcast. Like, who chose us?
spoon feed me information, please.
Even if it's over a 3-hour runtime, like is it a very American sort of way of doing it for you?
It's but I think you think as well, like how many great and sort of notable visual artists, you think like painters and things like that have come out of France.
Yeah.
They're obviously a very visually and aesthetic culture. So I think that comes across in the film.
I think it's a culture as well that is very open and accepting to letting people have that sort of outlet, that artistic outlet as well. And it's obvious, like you said, France is very much associated with art in many forms: film, painting, songs, all of that, even food to an extent. You know what I mean? Like anything, how artisanal their food is. But it comes across the most in their movies because they usually make movies about artists in very different ways. We have a clown, we have a musician in this, in this film here. So it's nice to see a culture that is sort of puts art on a pedestal, I guess, as opposed to many other different cultures, including American films, even Australian films, where movies about art and artists are about the troubles of it, where French films, I believe, highlight it as a positive. It's
about the appreciation.
Appreciation is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, Josh, would you like to elevator pitch us this film? Thank you for doing it for me last month, Kieran.
I'm not making that same mistake.
But if someone was to pick up this Blu-ray of Delicatessen and be like, do I watch it or not? What would you say to them, Josh, in the elevator to get them to watch Delicatessen?
Okay. Look, if you want to see something that's really different, it is a dark comedy, but there is at the heart of it a really touching love story. If you like in all honesty, I got sort of early Wes Anderson vibes.
Oh, yeah.
If you like Monty Python.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, and obviously if you've seen Amélie and like that, I think there's a lot to like here. Yeah, that's probably...
There we go.
For someone who was still drinking 12 hours ago.
Yeah, that was very well done. Yeah, very French of you. It's good to get into the mood of the culture.
It was about 9 hours ago.
I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt and not make you sound too much like an alcoholic. But
I was like, I want to rock up to my next pick.
It is Sunday morning.
Sauced up. Yeah, that's it. It's the Lord's Day.
And probably I was really interested to see what you guys thought on that first viewing.
Yeah.
And I think with multiple viewings, it does get better.
So, because this is in your favorite 4 on Letterboxd, is it a movie that when you first watched it, you were like, I love this, or have you gained appreciation for it?
No, definitely gained. Yeah. And it's on there. For me, it's just so different. And even watching it again the other night, 30 years on, with 30 more years of filmmaking, I still am blown away at how original this is.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
what else is in your top 4? Do you know off the top of your head?
On Letterboxd?
Yeah.
I think City of God's on there.
Okay, so we're doing City of God.
We're definitely doing City of God then, yeah.
The Big Lebowski's on there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
We'll just watch that in German or something.
love that movie.
Do you have a top 4 or is yours just The Departed?
He's just got that one.
I'm very, very defiant in that no one's gonna get any more out of me instead of The Departed. No, The Departed is just my favorite movie, so I was like, I'm one of those annoying people who's like, my top 10 changes all the time. I could wake up tomorrow and just be like, you know what? Anchorman's in my top 10 all of a sudden. So, which it was for a very long time. So for a star rating, I'm going 3.5 for this one. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the first half, but even still, when I was watching it, it didn't do anything for me, especially story-wise. I liked the story, but it didn't wow me to that extent. I was more impressed by the visual, the technical aspects of it, especially that musical sex scene, I guess you can call it. You know, I was very impressed by it. And then it lost me a little bit towards the end. So I'm at 3.5, but I think like you, I think the more I watch it, and this is probably something I would rewatch, probably it will grow an appreciation for it the more I watch it. So, but I'm starting at a base of a 3.5.
Yeah.
Same for me. I mean, pretty much echoing all of your sentiments. It's a 3.5. I think I was really enjoying it maybe up until the last 30 minutes where it did start to lose me a bit, and I sort of went, I'm struggling to stay engaged with this. There's just too much happening.
Yeah.
I would probably rewatch it though.
Yes.
And I think the visual elements of it, the way that it uses sound and music and things like that is all really clever and really fun to watch, and there's some really nice fun performances.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Josh?
Yeah, I mean this is a 5-star for me. The originality and like I was sort of saying before, the almost short stories that sort of happen in the apartment block. There's so many, and I think that's why on multiple viewings it works because there is so much going on. So that initial watch is there's a lot coming in.
It's a overload of everything.
But like I also said, you are dropped into it. Like,
oh god, yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, hit the ground running.
It's a sensory overload. It's a story overload. Like there's a lot happening. But I'm very intrigued to revisit it, and I would love to see a film print of this. If Goma or something ever do like a 35mm printer, I would love to see it on film.
True,
I think it would be incredible.
I think this might be the biggest discrepancy we've had.
It is.
So it's 1.5 stars worth of difference.
Yeah.
I think the Quiet Girl, you guys were you
We were
both 4.5?
pretty high, yeah.
Whereas I was at 3.5.
Yeah.
So I think this is the biggest.
Yeah. Which is interesting for me.
And you feel like you've disappointed us now.
I'm very disappointed.
I quit the show.
Not angry. I'm just disappointed.
But that's the thing. It's so weird saying that. I see it going up for me the more I pick up. Like that's the thing. I'm the same as Kieran. Like just watching it, I was like, there's so much happening right now. So
it was. I think, like I said, it's probably been 12 years or so since I watched it. So you know, watching it. This was at the start of my cinephile, like this is when I really started to become in love, especially with foreign film.
Yeah.
So it holds, and City of God was another one. So it holds kind of a special sort of thing in my heart.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, those movies always kind of hold a special place in our heart. The films that kind of kick off a love of films or foreign films.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked extensively about Drive,
Yes.
the Nicholas Winding Refn film.
Yeah.
If I'd watched that today for the first time, would I love it the same way? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it began that journey for me, so it will always be in that position. I feel like someone needs to like average out our scores to see who's really positive and who's really negative.
who's getting the winners out there.
You've given
I'm
out
more
three
positive.
5 stars, haven't you?
You have, yeah.
It's a
This,
Mama
It's Mama Tummy and Mummy.
And this.
Yeah, that is true.
Whereas I've not gone below. I don't think any of us have gone below 3.5 yet.
I did 3 for Barking Dogs, I believe.
Oh, I did. Did I?
I think we all.
Yeah,
I
I did.
I did 3.5.
You did 3.5. I think we did 3.
Yeah.
Still a positive review, though.
I think my reviews do lean more positively.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that comes from like, if I'm doing a review and it's something that I've really liked and I want other people to watch, I'm almost a bit like,
You wanna
just
push
give
it a little bit?
extra
Yeah.
push. Like,
But I'm the same. When I rate something, I usually rate it more on how I felt after watching it, and I think that's fun. Like I think and there's people out there who will be like, you should rate based on the film itself. It's like but you do that already, so that's fine. Like I'm not going to copy you. Like
Let me stay in my lane. You
Yeah,
stay.
exactly. Yeah,
We
don't
need
tell
all
you
the
how to
lanes.
fuck spiders. That's an Australian thing.
Sharing culture with the
Sharing
world.
culture with the world.
I am really excited though for the first one that we all give like a 2. Like I feel like that's gonna be a fun one when we all hate a film.
Well, I mean, could it happen on the next film? What are we watching next month? Are we going to give a 2-star? Well, we don't know. Hey, I'm just
Let's not.
I'm just getting the intrigue ready for the audience.
So, I'm a bit of a sports fan.
Ooh,
Nick, you're a bit of a sports fan,
I am. Yeah.
and
I think I know where
we're
you're
giving
going with
away when we're recording this. The Ashes are on at the moment.
I think I know what you're gonna do.
I can't keep a straight face.
I think we briefly spoke about this last
right,
recording.
'cause I'm lost.
So the Ashes are on at the moment. Nick and I are both big sports fans. So I thought, let's pick a sports movie. Let's pick a cricket movie.
Oh, my God.
He's done it. We never thought this day would come.
So we're going to 2001. We're going to India, a country that loves their cricket. And we are picking a film called Lagan, which is 3 hours and 45 minutes long.
Oh, my Lord.
I can't wait.
Just after you talking about stop making 4-hour-long films.
Thank you very much. But I will say, not to give too much away already, very highly critically acclaimed. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to a 3 hour and 44-minute long movie. But it's about cricket. It's like watching half a day of Test match.
Yeah, it's still shorter than an actual game of cricket.
Exactly. So, well, there we go. And India, a country we haven't done yet as well. So that'll be interesting.
And
Obviously
I
one of the-
actually, I've not watched many, if any, Indian films.
Yeah, I've seen probably some of the big ones. That's it. They come like out of Bollywood, but yeah. This will be interesting. I'm very intrigued. But it's because India is arguably one of the largest. Rivals Hollywood is one of the largest movie markets in the world. That will be next month. Lagan on next month of that 1-inch barrier. So, well, thank you all for watching. I'm sure I'm very intrigued what this next episode is going to look like. Thank you for watching on YouTube. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe. I said that very sincerely, didn't I? But it's what we have to do. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcast. There's a thing called iHeartRadio. That's what I was trying to think about earlier. I think we're on that too. I should probably
Capturing that boomer market.
That's it, baby. If you like AM radio, we're probably on there somewhere. Someone's illegally streaming us on the airwaves. Thank you, boys, as always. And all of our social links, letterbox links, so you can read the rest of Josh's top 4 and my one top 4 on Letterbox, all in the description below. But we'll see you next month on that 1-inch barrier.
See you guys.
Thank you.